Camille Rivers was the quiet force behind Sean P. Diddy Combs' empire until she vanished, leaving behind a hard drive that could destroy him. She wasn't famous, but she knew every secret. For over a decade, Camille managed Diddy's life with surgical precision: his meetings, his money, his messes. But when federal agents uncovered a massive financial crime web, all signs pointed to her. Was she his loyal right hand or the mastermind waiting for the perfect moment to bring him down? Sean P. Diddy Combs was more than just a musician. He was a brand, a symbol of success in American pop culture. Over the years, he built a vast empire that stretched far beyond hip-hop. From fashion lines and record labels to vodka brands and reality shows, Diddy had mastered the art of turning fame into fortune. His lifestyle was luxurious, his influence unmatched, and his public image carefully managed. But behind the scenes of this glittering world was a team of people working tirelessly to keep everything running smoothly. Among them, one person stood out: Camille Rivers, his longtime personal assistant. Camille wasn't a celebrity. She rarely appeared in the media, but insiders knew her as the real power behind the scenes. She organized Diddy's schedule, handled confidential deals, and was often the first to arrive and the last to leave. Camille had access to everything: his emails, his phones, his private travel plans. If Diddy trusted anyone with his secrets, it was her. People around the industry whispered that she knew things even his lawyers didn't. But because she stayed out of the spotlight, few paid attention to just how deep her involvement ran. For over a decade, Camille kept things in order. She was discreet, sharp, and fiercely loyal, or so it seemed. To most observers, she was just an assistant, but she handled matters that went far beyond calendar invites or wardrobe choices. She reviewed contracts, sat in on private meetings, and sometimes signed papers on Diddy's behalf. Her reach inside the empire was deeper than anyone realized. Still, no one suspected anything was wrong. Not until the first hint of trouble surfaced in the fall of 2024. A routine tax audit triggered questions about a few irregularities: payments that didn't make sense, companies that didn't seem to exist, bank wires to accounts overseas. At first, it looked like a clerical error and internal oversight. But as federal investigators dug deeper, they discovered a pattern. These weren't mistakes. They were intentional, and they had been going on for years. That's when the focus shifted, not just on Diddy, but on the person who managed his day-to-day life. Camille Rivers. Quietly and carefully, she had been involved in every corner of the empire. And now, she was at the center of a federal investigation that threatened to take everything down. When Camille Rivers was first called in by federal investigators, she appeared calm and composed. Dressed in a plain black suit, she answered questions politely, sticking to safe and rehearsed answers. She claimed to know nothing about fraudulent companies or foreign accounts. Her job, she insisted, was purely administrative. She scheduled meetings, handled travel, and made sure Diddy's chaotic life stayed on track. Investigators weren't convinced. They had already found connections that pointed in a different direction, connections that placed Camille at the heart of something far more serious. It started with a signature. One of the shell companies under investigation had paperwork signed not by Diddy, but by Camille. The company had no employees, no offices, and no legitimate business. Yet it had moved over $10 million in just under 2 years. Digging further, agents found that Camille had been given power of attorney over several of Diddy's financial interests. This wasn't a minor assistant role. It was authority, legal and direct. Even more suspicious was her access to multiple offshore accounts. These accounts, located in the Cayman Islands and Luxembourg, were tied to fake businesses linked to luxury real estate purchases and art acquisitions. Camille's name wasn't always visible, but traces of her approval were their digital fingerprints in the form of access logs, emails, and financial authorizations. She had been involved in the transactions from start to finish. Questions began to multiply. Did Camille act alone? Was she carrying out Diddy's orders? Or had she gone rogue, using her position to operate under his nose? What began as an investigation into the rapper now looked like a possible case of betrayal from within. But nothing was clear yet. Both possibilities were dangerous. If she was acting under Diddy's instruction, he was guilty. If she wasn't, she had fooled him for years. The public took notice. News outlets began reporting on the silent partner. Social media flooded with theories. Was she a criminal genius or a scapegoat? Opinions were split. Some praised her as a master strategist. Others called her a traitor. But behind the scenes, investigators were closing in on something even more alarming. They had obtained a search warrant for one of Diddy's private offices in Los Angeles. During the search, they found a locked safe hidden behind a false wall. Inside was a hard drive labeled with Camille's initials. The case had just taken a dramatic turn. The hard drive found in Diddy's private office changed everything. It wasn't encrypted, but it was carefully organized. Folders were named by year, each one containing hundreds of files, emails, audio recordings, scanned documents, and screenshots. All of it pointed back to Camille Rivers. She had collected and archived information for over a decade, tracking communications and financial activity across nearly every aspect of Diddy's empire. To investigators, it looked less like work materials and more like a personal insurance policy. One file stood out immediately. It was an audio recording labeled July 15 MTG. In it, Diddy's voice could be heard discussing strategies for transferring money to third-party accounts. He mentioned using artists' advance payments and business expenses as cover. Camille's voice was present too, not in protest, but offering suggestions on how to make the transactions look legitimate. The conversation sounded casual, even routine, suggesting this wasn't the first time they had done it. Other files added to the growing case. Emails showed Camille negotiating with real estate agents on behalf of fake corporations. There were documents tying her to a series of art purchases later found to be part of a laundering scheme. But perhaps the most shocking discovery was a digital spreadsheet titled Coverage. It listed names, dates, amounts, and next to each entry, a status label: paid, pending, or silenced. The implication was chilling. These were not just payments, they were bribes or payouts to keep people quiet. As investigators combed through the evidence, one thing became clear: Camille had kept everything. She had receipts, call logs, bank statements, and voice memos, even ones Diddy had likely forgotten. It appeared she had anticipated the possibility of a collapse and prepared for it. But the question was why? If she was guilty, why collect so much incriminating evidence? If she was innocent, why stay silent for so long? Speculation intensified. Some believed Camille had planned to expose Diddy all along. Others thought she feared for her safety and kept the files as leverage. Either way, the discovery of the hard drive provided prosecutors with the strongest evidence yet. Diddy was officially charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. The spotlight turned back to Camille. Her cooperation was now crucial, but she was nowhere to be found. The assistant who once controlled every detail of Diddy's life had vanished without a trace just as her evidence began to bring his world crashing down. Camille Rivers' disappearance was as sudden as it was suspicious. One day, she was the center of the most high-profile criminal investigation in the country. The next, she was gone. Her apartment in Manhattan was found abandoned. No signs of struggle, no packed bags. Her car was still in the parking garage, and her bank accounts hadn't been touched in days. Surveillance footage from her building showed her entering the lobby 3 nights before she was scheduled to appear before a grand jury. She never came back out. Theories exploded overnight. Some believed Diddy had arranged for her to disappear silenced to keep her from testifying. Others claimed she had planned her escape and fled with millions. A few even speculated that she had entered witness protection after making a secret deal with prosecutors. The truth was far less clear, and the timing couldn't have been worse. Prosecutors had just begun building their case around the hard drive, but without Camille's live testimony, key evidence would be harder to validate in court. Then came the package. It was delivered by hand to the private investigator working for the prosecution, marked only with Camille's initials. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note that simply read, "In case I can't speak." The drive contained a pre-recorded video statement. In the footage, Camille sat in a dimly lit room. She looked tired but calm. She explained her role in the operation, describing how it began with small financial shortcuts that gradually turned into full-scale fraud. She claimed Diddy had pressured her, threatened her, and at times isolated her to maintain control. She said she collected evidence not to bring him down, but to protect herself. The video went on to detail specific financial crimes, shell companies, fake contracts, and manipulated accounting systems. She even named individuals in Diddy's circle who allegedly helped cover it all up. But she stopped short of taking full responsibility. Camille said she was complicit but not in control. Her final words hinted at danger. "If you're watching this, something's gone wrong." Please look deeper. The video was enough to proceed with the trial, but Camille's absence cast a long shadow. Without her in the courtroom, Diddy's defense team began claiming the evidence was fake, the hard drive planted, and the entire case built on lies. Still, Camille had left a trail strong enough to continue the case. But the mystery remained. Where had she gone? And was she ever coming back? As the trial against Sean P. Diddy Combs began, the courtroom became the focus of national attention. The prosecution laid out a detailed case built around the digital files found on the hard drive and the video testimony left behind by Camille Rivers. Each piece of evidence was methodically presented: emails tracing the flow of money, audio clips of private conversations, forged contracts, and records of overseas transfers. Without Camille present, the prosecution relied heavily on the mountain of documentation she had left behind. It painted a picture of an organized, long-running financial scheme that involved laundering millions through shell companies, false business expenses, and hush payments. Diddy's legal team struck back hard. They argued that the hard drive had been tampered with, that Camille had manipulated the evidence to frame Diddy in a bid for power and money. They pointed out her absence as a red flag, questioning why the key witness had disappeared if she had nothing to hide. The defense pushed a new theory that Camille had been working behind the scenes to take control of Diddy's assets, slowly positioning herself to replace him. Then, in a stunning moment midway through the trial, a trust document surfaced, one that had been quietly filed years earlier. It revealed that in the event of Diddy's incapacitation or conviction, Camille Rivers would temporarily take over as trustee of several major business holdings, including a controlling share in 2 of his companies. Suddenly, the motive shifted. Was Camille trying to expose a crime, or was she orchestrating a hostile takeover? As the jury deliberated, another twist hit the news cycle. A whistleblower, a former accountant in Diddy's company, leaked a signed affidavit admitting they were responsible for structuring the financial shell game. They claimed Camille had discovered the wrongdoing and initially tried to stop it, but was threatened into silence. The whistleblower said Camille began documenting everything in secret as a way to survive in a dangerous environment. She couldn't escape. The jury returned a mixed but significant verdict. Diddy was found guilty on charges of conspiracy and financial fraud, though some charges were dropped due to Camille's absence. He faced a lengthy prison sentence, but the mystery still hung in the air. Camille Rivers had not been found. Some believed she had started a new life abroad. Others insisted she would return once justice had taken its course. The empire had fallen, but its most important witness had vanished into the shadows, leaving behind a legacy of secrets, strategy, and survival.